Robert Smith is a name that has lived in the hearts of music lovers for decades. With his wild black hair, smudged lipstick, and distant gaze, he created a style and sound that touched millions. As the frontman of The Cure, he became the face of a generation that felt lost, misunderstood, or pushed aside. Songs like Boys Don't Cry, Love Song, and Disintegration became more than just music, they were lifelines for people trying to make sense of their pain. But behind Robert's haunting voice and poetic lyrics lies a deeper, darker side of his story, one not often told in public. It's the story of a man who has spent most of his life carrying quiet pain, battling inner storms, and fighting to stay true to himself in an industry that often demands people to be someone they're not. Despite fame, Robert Smith has always lived quietly, away from big scandals or headlines. He has no children, avoids fame's spotlight, and has remained with the same woman for over 50 years. But this calm appearance hides many struggles. From being beaten at school for looking different to dealing with band fights, personal doubts, and emotional breakdowns, Robert's journey has not been easy. His music may be beautiful, but much of it was born out of deep sadness. This article looks at the real Robert Smith, the one behind the makeup, the one whose silence speaks louder than any scream. Through his early life, career ups and downs, personal relationships, and conflicts, we will explore the side of him that rarely gets the attention it deserves. Because sometimes, the most powerful stories are the ones whispered in the dark. Robert Smith was born in 1959 in Blackpool, England. His early years were anything but stable. His family moved often, finally settling in Crawley, West Sussex, a place that would later become the birthplace of The Cure. Robert was not a loud or outgoing child. Instead, he was quiet and kept to himself, often hiding in his room, listening to music for hours. His world was filled with vinyl records, cloudy skies, and thoughts he couldn't always put into words. While his family wasn't poor, they weren't rich either. His father, Alex Smith, had served in the Navy and often sang at home with a warm, deep voice. His mother, Rita, played piano and believed music could help her children understand the world. It was a peaceful home, and even though his parents didn't push their children into music, they encouraged anything that brought joy. Robert had 3 siblings, but he wasn't the star of the family. That title belonged to his sister Janet, who was a piano genius. Robert, feeling overshadowed, picked up a guitar instead. It became his way to speak without using words. Music gave him a space to be himself in a world that didn't always welcome different people. In school, Robert didn't fit in. He once wore a black velvet skirt to class and was beaten up for it. Teachers called it a phase. Students treated him like a stranger. But instead of giving up, Robert went deeper into his music. At 17, he formed a band called Malice, which later became The Cure. His early life shaped him into someone who didn't try to be like everyone else. He was different, and that became his strength, even when it hurt. In 1976, after being suspended from school for performing with his band, Robert Smith made a life-changing decision. He left school and focused completely on music. With childhood friends like L.O.L. Tolhurst, Michael Dempsey, and Pearl Thompson, he formed a band called Easy Cure, which later became just The Cure. The name had a deep meaning: music as a cure for sadness, loneliness, and feeling lost. Their music was cold, emotional, and honest, filled with strange sounds and deep thoughts. At just 19 years old, Robert signed a record deal with Fiction Records and took on a big role in the band, not just as the lead singer, but also as the creative mind behind their sound and look. Their first single, Killing an Arab, was inspired by Albert Camus' novel The Stranger. The song talked about the meaninglessness of violence, but many people misunderstood the title. For years, Robert had to explain that it wasn't racist. He once said, "If I had known it would be taken the wrong way, I would have named it differently." That moment showed how Robert's honesty and deep ideas could sometimes be misread. As The Cure released albums like 3 Imaginary Boys, 17 Seconds, Faith, and Pornography, their music became darker and more personal. Robert once said that Pornography was written during one of the lowest points in his life. "I wasn't sure I'd still be alive after it," he admitted. During this time, the band fell into fights, alcohol, and breakdowns. The pressure became too much. In 1982, Robert and Simon Gallup got into a physical fight backstage, and the band nearly ended. But instead of giving up, Robert took time away, played with other bands, and came back stronger. He wasn't just surviving, he was transforming. By the mid-1980s, Robert Smith had returned to The Cure, but things were different. The fights and breakdowns had changed him. Now, he was more focused, ready to shape the band into something new. In 1985, they released The Head on the Door, which mixed sadness with beauty. One of its songs, In Between Days, showed how music could be joyful even when the words were full of pain. The band's popularity grew. They started touring the world and getting noticed far beyond the goth music scene. Then came Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me in 1987, a loud, wild, and creative album filled with different styles and emotions. It was a success, and The Cure was now on top of the music world. Their song Just Like Heaven became a massive hit, and Robert Smith's voice was suddenly everywhere, from radio to TV to magazine covers. But fame didn't change him the way it changed others. Robert didn't buy huge houses or chase the spotlight. He didn't turn The Cure into a money-making brand. In a time when rock music was becoming more commercial, Robert stood by one belief: only write music when you have something real to say. That belief made his music hit deep. In 1989, he released what many call his greatest album, Disintegration. At 29, feeling like he might not live past 30, Robert poured everything into that record. Songs like Pictures of You, Love Song, and Plainsong weren't just songs. They were emotions in sound, memories, fears, love, and sadness all blended together. The album sold over 3 million copies and remains a masterpiece. Yet, as Robert became more successful, he also became more distant from the public eye. He wasn't trying to be a rock star. He was just trying to survive. In a world filled with broken celebrity marriages and wild love stories, Robert Smith's relationship is surprisingly simple and beautiful. He met Mary Poole when he was just 13 years old. They both went to the same school in Crawley. Their love didn't start right away. At first, they were friends. Over time, that friendship slowly turned into love. While Robert was suspended from school and starting his band, Mary stood by him. She never tried to change him, never judged him, and never left, even when the world did. They officially became a couple in 1976, the same year The Cure was born. After more than a decade together, they married in 1988. What's even more unique is their decision not to have children. Robert once said, "I can't imagine bringing a child into this world when I'm still figuring out how to survive in it myself." That shows how deeply he feels things. Instead of starting a family, he put all his love into Mary, and into music. One of The Cure's most famous songs, Love Song, was written as a gift to her. While many musicians are caught in scandals, affairs, or public drama, Robert's love life has remained quiet and steady. No cheating, no fights in the tabloids, just two people choosing to stay together. Still, being in love didn't take away Robert's struggles. He continued to face anxiety, depression, and insomnia. At times, he disappeared from public view for years, only coming back to record music or perform on stage. The spotlight never felt like home. Mary, a quiet house, a warm drink, and unfinished lyrics, that's where he found peace. Through all his pain, Mary has been his anchor. If The Cure is a long road of emotions, Mary is the constant guiding light. Even though Robert Smith has lived a life free of big scandals, he hasn't escaped conflict. In fact, some of his hardest moments came from the people closest to him, his bandmates. In 1982, during a difficult tour for the album Pornography, Robert and bassist Simon Gallup got into a serious fight. It wasn't just a simple disagreement, it was the result of months of stress, late nights, and emotional pressure. The two ended up physically fighting backstage, and the band fell apart soon after. They didn't speak for a long time. Robert left the band, and many fans thought it was the end of The Cure. But with time and healing, they eventually made peace. Another hard moment came when Robert had to let go of his childhood friend LOL Tolhurst, who had helped start The Cure. Over time, LOL's alcohol problems became so serious that they affected the band's performances and recording sessions. As much as it hurt, Robert had to make the painful choice to ask him to leave. It wasn't easy losing someone who had been there from the very beginning, but Robert knew the band couldn't survive if he didn't take action. Outside of the band, Robert also faced public misunderstandings. The song Killing an Arab, inspired by literature, was often misinterpreted as racist, even though it wasn't. These moments were painful for someone who always tried to speak honestly through his music. Yet, Robert never fought back with loud words or angry interviews. He remained quiet, explained when necessary, and let his music speak for itself. In a world that often rushes to judge, Robert Smith chose to stay silent, and that silence, filled with emotion and art, became his loudest answer. As the years passed, Robert Smith began to feel the heavy weight of his legacy. After releasing Disintegration, The Cure stood at the peak of global fame, but success didn't bring him the happiness people expected. In many interviews, Robert admitted feeling overwhelmed. He never wanted to be a rock god or lead a movement. He only wanted to create music that helped him understand himself, and maybe, in doing so, help others too. Yet, no matter what he did, he couldn't escape the image the world had created. Black eyeliner, sad lyrics, and a soft, aching voice became trademarks. But Robert Smith is much more than that. He is a man full of contradictions. He's shy but stands in front of thousands. He dislikes the spotlight but sings under it. He writes about sorrow but finds joy in small things like a quiet night with Mary or the way a guitar riff feels when it hits just right. Over the years, Robert has often talked about how strange it is to see himself turned into a symbol. "I never wanted to represent anything except myself," he once said. And yet, for millions of fans, Robert became a mirror, the voice of their darkest thoughts and softest dreams. With each new album, he added another layer to his complex legacy. From Wish in 1992 to Bloodflowers in 2000, he stayed true to his vision. He didn't follow music trends. He didn't try to make the next big hit. Instead, he focused on emotion, raw, real, and timeless. While many bands from the 80s faded away or lost their identity trying to stay modern, Robert Smith and The Cure remained strong. But it wasn't easy. Every new album came with pressure. Fans wanted more hits, labels wanted more sales, and critics wanted something new. But Robert never gave in. He once said that music is not about success, it's about honesty. And if he didn't feel something deeply, he simply wouldn't write. That's why there were often long gaps between albums. In the 2000s and 2010s, Robert spoke less in public but stayed active with The Cure. He became a quiet figure in a loud world, a symbol of how to survive the music industry without losing your soul. He played major festivals, sold out stadiums, and refused to age in the way most celebrities do. His hair remained wild, his clothes still black, and his spirit untouched by fame's sharp edges. Fans often say that seeing Robert on stage is like watching someone exorcise their own pain, and in doing so, heal yours too. It's not about perfect vocals or dance routines. It's about truth. And that's what Robert always offered. Even as the world around him changed, with social media, TikTok trends, and fast fame, he remained loyal to something deeper. He wasn't trying to go viral. He was trying to survive emotionally. And for thousands of fans struggling with mental health, loneliness, or simply trying to make sense of life, Robert's quiet strength was everything. In 2018, The Cure celebrated their 40th anniversary with a massive concert at Hyde Park in London. More than 65,000 people attended, and many cried as Robert performed the songs that had once saved them in their teenage years. The event wasn't just a show, it was a celebration of survival. Few bands last 4 decades. Even fewer do it without losing their core. But Robert had done it. He stood on stage that night, nearly 60 years old, wearing the same black shirt and heavy eyeliner, singing with the same emotion he had as a young man in Crawley. For many fans, that concert felt like a reunion with an old friend, one who had always been there, quietly, in the background of their lives. Over the last few years, The Cure has continued to tour and release music. Robert has hinted at new albums, and even though delays happen, fans are patient. They know that when Robert finally shares something, it will come from the heart. Unlike many artists, he doesn't release music just to stay in the news. He waits until he has something to say. In a time where everything moves fast, that kind of patience is rare. And it's what makes his music so special. Every lyric, every guitar echo, feels personal, like a secret whispered into the dark. Robert Smith is more than just a musician. He's a symbol of quiet rebellion, emotional honesty, and staying true to oneself. While others changed to fit the world, Robert stayed the same and made the world come to him. He never joined celebrity circles. He didn't promote products or do flashy ads. Even when The Cure became one of the most recognized bands globally, he didn't let that change his values. He remained deeply personal, focused on the music, and stayed loyal to the people he started with. His love for Mary, his bandmates, and even his fans has always come from a real place. That's why, when people talk about The Cure, they don't just mention the music, they mention how the music made them feel. For many, Robert's songs were the only thing that made sense during difficult times. His lyrics didn't lie or offer false hope. They simply said, "You're not alone." And that message, delivered again and again over 40 years, is perhaps why he remains so loved. He gave people permission to feel, to cry, to be strange, and to still be okay. That's a rare gift. When we think of Robert Smith, it's easy to picture the makeup, the messy hair, and the moody stage presence. But behind all that is a man who has lived a life full of quiet battles. He fought against being misunderstood, against depression, and against an industry that often rewards fakery over truth. And yet, he came out the other side, older, wiser, and still writing music that matters. His dark side isn't scandal or controversy. It's the emotional weight he has carried for decades, the sadness in his songs, the silence in his interviews, the struggles he never made public. But instead of letting that darkness destroy him, he turned it into art. Into songs that helped millions. Into concerts that became safe spaces. Into a legacy that will outlast trends, platforms, and even generations. Robert Smith may never be the loudest voice in the room. But his is the voice that stays with you long after the music stops. And that, perhaps, is his greatest power.